friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. It is that time of year when we have so much coming in from the garden that I can hardly keep up with it. So I thought I would do just like a massive harvest and preservation video where we take you out to the garden, show you everything that we're harvesting, and then take you back into the kitchen and show you how we were preserving it through the year. So I'm starting here in my parsley row. It definitely was ready for a haircut. We put parsley in all sorts of things. We typically dehydrate it. Sometimes we freeze it. Sometimes we freeze dry it. But we use it in all sorts of things. I think the number one reason why I need parsley in such large volumes is for our cream of master mix. It uses parsley, and I make that master mix all the time. After the parsley, we went to our basil and harvested that. That is, of course, for pesto. What else? We use pesto for your typical pasta sauce, but we also use it on pizza as a pizza base as well. And then everyone pretty much loves it on their sandwiches, like a deli meat sandwich. Mixing it into mayonnaise, a pesto mayonnaise. It's absolutely delicious. I really wish we could can it, but we can't. So I'm going to take you inside and show you how we preserve the basil. I think I finally managed to get a year's supply. Last year I was close, but we ran out of pesto, I think around January. So I almost doubled the amount that we were getting this year. Or I almost doubled the amount we planted this year. And I think we're going to hit our target. I've already been putting some up, and we're pretty stocked on it. So after the herbs, we went over to the cucumbers. We are growing 2 different varieties of cucumbers this year. The Bayet Alpha as a snacking cucumber, and then the National Pickling as a pickling cucumber. So the first vines you saw me picking was the snacking cucumbers, and my children are just eating those as fast as they can come off the vine. They go out every morning before school and do a good-sized harvest. But these pickles here, we will take inside and do some pickling projects and get those put up on the shelf. Last year, I put up way too many Amish bread and butter pickles. We still have plenty of those, so I'm not going to do any of those this year. And we will use these cucumbers for something else, including something new to me, which is to chop them up and freeze dry them and use them as salad toppings. But I'm not showing you that in this video because it's just chopping things up and putting it in the freeze dryers. But we'll be doing a different project for that in today's video. After that, I headed over to our zucchini vines. This is a squash variety called zucchini rampicante. We absolutely love it. It vines, which makes growing it a whole lot easier to manage. Manage the squash bugs, manage the fungal disease. It is so prolific, and it's just my absolute favorite. It's the only zucchini that I grow now. It goes by many names. Some people call it a trombocino or tromboncino squash. Some people call it a trumpet squash. So it goes by many names, but zucchini rampicante or zucchino rampicante is what I have seen it called the most. I get it from Baker Creek Seeds, by the way. So now we're moving into on the inside of our trellis tunnel, which is pretty much everything on that outside is just reflected on this other side. So it's just a whole lot more cucumbers, a whole lot more zucchini. It's just everything on that trellis is planted on both sides. I have some fun projects for those zucchini coming up, so stay tuned. I wasn't able to get to it in this video because I wanted to do a dedicated video to it. It is the pineapple zucchini. It's one that not everyone, but a lot of people have been requesting, and I did film that recently, so it will be posted shortly after this video probably. So stay tuned for that if you're interested in the pineapple canning pineapple zucchini, which is basically making your zucchini taste like canned pineapple. It's pretty awesome. So you see me stepping over that bed of mustard greens. I did not realize that mustard greens grew cut and come again style, but they do. I harvested. I thought I did. Well, I did harvest, but I thought they were goners, and they are coming back bushier than ever. So I think I'm going to get another round of mustard greens out of that, which is nice. We've been canning them, saute them up with bacon. Fantastic. These are our green beans. This is a new to me variety. It's French Vortex Filet green bean. And I am telling you what, I am really close to going ahead and making the decision to put this in my garden from here on out. They have been so prolific. The Japanese beetles have been attacking it like crazy, and they are still thriving despite having very holey leaves and despite just taking a whole lot of bug damage. They just continue producing. We've been harvesting for weeks now, mostly just enough to snack on for fresh green beans because we absolutely love just raw green beans straight off the vine. Look how long they are. Just amazing. And one of the reasons why I really went for this green bean is because no matter how long they get and no matter how plump those beans inside the pod get, they don't get stringy, which is fantastic. That's one of the things I've always kind of disliked about growing green beans is having to string them. But we don't have to do that with this. Okay, now on to some more herbs. This is my lime basil. Oh, this is my first year growing this, and I am definitely growing it from here on out. It makes the best tea. If you smell it, it smells like you've got your nose in a bowl of limes or lemons. I mean, it is so citrusy. So we're going to preserve that for year-round use as well. If you would like help planning a productive garden, scroll down to the description box of this video and click this link for a free garden printable. We calculated quantities for a year's supply of the most common garden vegetables and organized them into a neat chart to help you plan. We'll send it straight to your inbox. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming tutorials on gardening and food preservation, food storage, and more. First up is the parsley. Anytime I am trying to clean herbs or greens, I use my salad spinner because it just does a great job. It flings the bugs out if there are any in there, and I can clearly see when it's nice and clean, when the water's running clear. But we're just going to freeze dry these. I think I ended up getting 2.5 trays out of it. But I just chopping them up. We don't have to worry about items being in a single layer like we do with the dehydrator when we're working with the freeze dryer. But I have found that the freeze dryer is just above and beyond when it comes to preserving the smell and the taste of herbs. It is by far my preferred drying method and preservation method for herbs now. But we're going to do the same thing with our lime basil. Lime basil is a whole lot easier to strip than the parsley, and the parsley took me forever and a day to get ready for cleaning and onto the trays. But you can see the lime basil, you just slide your fingers down that stem and the leaves pop right off, which is really nice. But again, I'm going to run those through my salad spinner and get them nice and clean. I don't think there were any bugs on that one, which is interesting because that probably has to do with how strong the citrus smell is. I didn't think about that before, about how it might deter pests with its strong citrusy scent, but there was absolutely no bugs on these, and come to think of it, there was no bug damage on the plants either, despite there being bug damage on plants around it, which is very interesting. It just is now dawning on me, like while I'm talking about this out loud, all of this just dawned on me. This would be a fantastic companion plant. I'm having horrible problems with bugs on my green beans right now, so now I'm thinking my mind is just racing with putting lime basil next to my green beans. Okay, on to the cucumbers. We are going to make dill pickles. And let's see, I think we're going, I decided to try some cucumber chips this year. I've seen people do cucumber chips before. I have never made them, but we're trying them this year. This is my handy dandy manual vegetable chopper. I absolutely love it. This thing it's like a vintage type tool I got on eBay many years ago, but it's just like a rotary manual chopper, and it slices things so fine and so quickly. You can see they just plop right out there. You can see how thin they are. I'm trying to go for as thin of a strip as I can because I'm thinking maybe that can help it not only dry faster, but maybe have a little bit of a crisp to it. I don't know. Like I said, this is my first time doing this, so I'm not a pro at making cucumber chips. But we just got all these processed, and then we're going to flavor them multiple different ways. The posts and groups and stuff that I've been following who do these cucumber chips, they do them in either just a regular dehydrator, like an Excalibur, or a freeze dryer. And I was already had to run my freeze dryer for the herbs, so I just went ahead and went the freeze drying route for these as well. But you can absolutely do these cucumber style chips in your regular dehydrator as well. You don't have to have a freeze dryer to do this. I do think that there's going to be a texture difference for sure, just because that's just how it is with freeze drying and dehydrating. Dehydrating has a little bit of a chewier texture. So I'm going to be, since I'm new to this and I don't know what flavors were like, I'm testing out several different kinds. For this first one, I'm doing half batch of ranch. I'm using my homemade ranch. And then the second half, I'm using this caramelized onion butter seasoning. I thought this was going to be an awesome seasoning for our vegetables, but we actually really don't like it on our vegetables. I mean, it's okay, but it's just not amazing. You know, you think caramelized onion butter, you think, oh yeah, awesome. But I'm hoping that as a chip seasoning, that it might turn out nice. So we're doing half and half trays of that, and then I'm doing another tray of some. I think I did an Italian seasoning and Italian seasoning and salt on half of the tray. At the time of filming this, we've actually already tasted. I mean, at the time, not at the time of filming, but at the time that I'm talking with y'all about these things, we've already tasted it, and the Italian salt was the best. The caramelized onion butter was pretty good, but not as amazing as I thought it would be. And I think the ranch came in a really close second. But this salted Italian seasoning was definitely by far the winner. Although all of them were good. All of them were completely edible and, getting eaten up. This second half of the tray, I tried the Mrs. Dash. I would probably say the Mrs. Dash came in last place as far as the taste goes with the different seasoning options that we tried. Of course, everybody's flavors are different. Everybody's palate is different, but I think the Mrs. Dash was probably our least favorite. So now that we have all those cucumber chips done and the herbs done, we're just going to pop them into the freeze dryer. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I don't know who's watching this video who may not have watched previous videos, and I don't want to leave y'all hanging. So with a freeze dryer, you don't have a certain time and a certain temperature that you go by like you do with a dehydrator. You just simply let it do its thing. It's programmed to, and it has sensors to know when things are dry, and you just kind of let it go. I believe this run, it was close to the 40-hour mark, and I can guarantee you that's because of those cucumbers. Cucumbers are so full of moisture that they take a lot longer to get fully dry. Next is onto our green beans. So we got a good-sized harvest, but it still wasn't quite enough to do like a full canner load of green beans. At the time of talking to you right now, I have officially gotten a full harvest of that, and so we do have a video coming up dedicated solely to how to can green beans. But since I didn't have enough for that full canner load and a full video, we decided to do dilly beans. So just in case you don't know, dilly beans are green beans that have been cooked in like a dill pickle brine. So I had this coleslaw brine left over from our recent canning of coleslaw starter. And anytime I have brine left over, I go ahead and can it up so that it makes future pickling projects a whole lot easier. The coleslaw brine is very similar to, it is a pickle brine. It's just not heavy on the dill. It's not heavy on the seasonings that make dill pickles like a true dill pickle. But I figured it would be a great brine for this, and it was. It was delicious. Everyone enjoyed it. So I am just basically packing this jar with green beans. Green beans have a tendency to float, so you want to pack them as tight as you can. And if I remember correctly, I still got a lot of float on this jar, which means I didn't pack them as heavily as I could have. But I am just trying to stuff them down in there as much as I can, using my fingers, using a knife to cut off the tops if they are too high, too tall, but just basically stuffing as many in there as I can. Once I finally got it full enough, it's up to a ½ inch headspace, by the way, is how you want to fill up your green beans, to ½ inch headspace. We are ready to season it. So I am seasoning with garlic and dill, just like I do my regular dill pickles. I'm using a ½ teaspoon of my freeze-dried garlic here, and there'll be plenty of water in there to rehydrate that without it being an issue. But then I'm also using fresh dill because we grow dill specifically for our dill pickles. It's just nothing like fresh dill for dill pickles. I think that's what makes dill pickles so good when they are cooked with fresh dill. So I'm just shoving that in there as best as I can, and then we are ready to go ahead and top it with that brine. Now this brine, like I said, I canned it, so it is sterile inside that jar. If you're making brine from fresh, you're going to want to bring that brine to a boil to ensure that it's clean and good and doesn't have all the bacteria is killed off and all of that. But like I said, I canned this, and so it's already been boiled and it's in a clean environment. As you can see, debubbling this is pretty useless, but still, just go ahead and debubble. And I needed to top it back off to a 1/2 inch headspace, and then we are ready to get that in the canner in just a minute. We need a clean lid and a clean ring. Oh yeah, I forgot to wipe the rims. I almost forgot to wipe the rims. So wipe the rims with a damp cloth or a wet paper towel, just with some water, and then put your clean ring on, or clean lid and clean ring. You want to put that ring on to fingertip tight, which means don't screw it down super hard. Just go to the point of resistance in a 1/4 turn more. We're going to set that aside and get the other things ready for the canner. So for this next thing that I'm going to do, I had that brine left over, so I thought, why don't I go ahead and make up some dill pickles while I have that brine anyway. Again, that's a coleslaw brine, so it's not technically a dill pickle brine, but it is very close, and we love the taste of that brine anyway, so even if it isn't our typical dill brine, I decided to go ahead and use it. It's like a shortcut. I already have the jar open, and I don't want it to go to waste. If you want a true, like my normal tried and true dill pickle recipe, we do have a whole video dedicated to that, and I will link that in the description box below, and it will take you step by step through how to make dill pickles. But just for reference, you typically want to leave 1/2 inch of headspace on your pickles, but I find that it's hard to get those pickles the exact right height to be 1/2 inch of headspace of pickles or of cucumber slices. So I generally go anywhere between 1/2 inch to 1 inch, but when it comes to the brine, I do fill it up to a 1/2 inch headspace. Once the cucumbers are all settled where they need to be, it's on to seasoning, and I season them the same way that I do my dill pickles, which is 1/2 teaspoon of garlic and some dill. I don't measure the dill. I would probably say, if I had to just guess, I would probably say 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh dill, but that's totally a guess. I just kind of eyeball these fresh sprigs as to how much I want in them. But once the seasonings are done, it's time to top off with the brine. Again, step-by-step tutorial for the dill pickles will be in the description box below. Just out of habit, I try to always debubble, but when it comes to pickles, it's pretty much impossible to debubble, just like with those green beans. But, I just don't want to get in the habit of forgetting. So I debubbled as best as I could, and then I wiped the rims with a clean, wet paper towel, and then a clean lid, and then a clean ring onto fingertip tight, not screwed all the way down, just to the point of resistance. And that one will be ready to go into the canner. I did several more of those as well. You can see we have a little bit of this brine left, and I didn't want to throw it out, but I also didn't want to put it in the fridge just empty like that. So we are just going to do a jar of refrigerator pickles. You can absolutely make pickles without actually canning them. You just have to, make sure that you eat them within a certain amount of time. But refrigerator pickles is basically just cucumber slices or spears that are soaked in a brine and stored in your refrigerator. So this pickle brine, I like to have a jar of brine in my fridge pretty much at all times during the canning season, so that when I do have some cucumbers that are either left over from a big project, or I just have a couple come in and we're not going to be eating them fresh soon enough, I like to just go ahead and toss them in a jar. You just give it a good shake, and that will be stored in the fridge, and we'll be eating these first. We always eat through our refrigerator pickles first before we start cracking open jars of canned ones. But here's what we ended up with, and we are ready to can them all in the same batch. These dill pickle spears and the dilly beans, they need to can for the same amount of time. So I just went ahead and did a 1 canner load for both batches of items. I just want to make sure that the the jars are at least submerged under 1 inch of headspace, and they are, so I'm ready to turn my canner water on. We don't start the processing time until we're at a hard rolling boil, which we are now, so we're going to process for 10 minutes. 10 minutes is enough time to give these a good safe seal while also sanitizing the jars, because I did not pre-sterilize them. Here's what it looks like coming out. This is the dill pickle spears first. You can see even though I stuffed them as hard as I could, we still had some floating. That's just going to happen. And same thing with the green beans. I stuffed them as hard as I could, still had some floating. But we loved these dilly beans. So I will be making up many more of those for just another way to put up green beans besides just regular old canned green beans. And last but not least, we are going to turn all of that yummy basil into pesto. So the first thing we need to do is just destem it. I don't think there's any good tricks to this. I've tried a bunch of tricks that I saw on social media, and I still just default to just using my hands like this. Just stripping the leaves from the stem and then just pinching off those top buds. But once we get everything nice and destemmed, it's time to give it a good clean, which I use my salad spinner for because it just does a good job. So once all of that is clean, we are ready to move forward with the pesto recipe. I use a food processor for this. I imagine you could use a blender, but the food processor is all I've ever used to make pesto. So for this recipe, we need 3.5 cups of packed basil leaves. I load up that measuring cup with basil leaves, and even though I pack it with basil leaves, I typically still need to add a little bit more in the end, which we'll talk about how to visually tell whether or not you need more basil or not. The next ingredient is going to be garlic, and I like to use 3 teaspoons of minced garlic. I like to use my ready-made in water garlic, but if I didn't have that, I would use my freeze-dried minced garlic because it would have plenty of time and liquid to rehydrate with that olive oil. Next, pesto traditionally uses pine nuts, but pine nuts are extremely expensive in my area, so I use pumpkin seeds to make this more budget friendly. We need 1/4 cup of those nuts. Then we need a 1/4 teaspoon or a heaping teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. Next, we need some Parmesan cheese, and I like to do about 1/2 cup of that, sometimes a little bit less. Then we need some lemon juice to keep things nice and green, keep it from browning, but also to add some taste. And I just do a splash of that. Don't really measure, just kind of do a squirt of it. And then last but not least, we need our olive oil. I usually start with 1 cup of olive oil, but sometimes during the actual processing, I add a little bit of more olive oil while it is still spinning, and I just judge by consistency for that. Whenever I'm running my food processor for pesto or pretty much anything, keep a spatula on hand to scrape things down and get it nice and blended. Otherwise, those pumpkin seeds especially tend to not grind up very well, and the pumpkin or the basil leaves can even get not processed up very well too. But I wanted to show you what this looks like. It is not green enough, and it's also not sticking together quite right. So that was just one visual cue that told me I need to add more basil leaves. So this base recipe is just that. It's just a base recipe. But then at some point we've got to go in there and taste it and see what's going on. So I added those basil leaves, and after I did that, the color was a lot nicer. So now it's time for a taste test. So I got a spoon that I haven't used yet and tasted it. And sometimes it takes me a while to kind of figure out what to do. But I decided that it needed a little bit more pumpkin seeds. And this is just to taste. So, it's going to be different for everybody. Just taste and kind of see what you think you need. I decided we needed some more pumpkin seeds. I wanted a little bit more garlic. And if I remember correctly, I think I did a tad bit more pepper and salt too, just to add some more flavor. It was really heavy on the lemon juice, and I was trying to cut that and just get an overall better taste. So again, I'm going to taste test with the new spoon, and this time it was good to go. So after we have our final recipe, it's just jarring it up. I wish we could can it, but we can't. So these are going in 1/2 pint jars into our freezer. And that's it for today, y'all. We will see you next time. Bye.